I'm sure you have noticed that beef prices have been climbing at the store. In fact, they're up 14% since last year. And why is that? Well, today we're going to dive into why these prices are raising, what it means for the future, and most importantly, what can you do right now to keep your grocery budget in control. Now, the older I get, the less I consume meat, I think. But my husband, on the other hand, he is a carnivore. He loves his meat and potatoes. And it's not unusual for him to have 1 or 2 hamburgers a day. And we're talking Wagyu beef hamburgers, even more expensive. And boy, does he love his steaks. So when prices climb, it definitely hits my wallet. And yes, I do what I can. I try to get the manager's special. You can get roasts and very often steaks half price, but not so much for the ground beef. And I keep a freezer stocked from better times with lower prices of meat, but it still affects our wallet. So why is this happening? The U.S. cattle herd is the smallest since the 1950s, when I was born. I guess it's been years of drought has forced ranchers to sell their cattle early, and they say rebuilding a herd takes years, not just months. But those costs are not just rising for the rancher, they're all the way up the chain. Even when cattle are available, there are labor shortages in the processing plants, and that can slow things down and raising costs even further. But here's the strange thing, which I found remarkable. Even with higher prices, there has been higher demand. People still want their beef, whether it's families or restaurants buying it. And I think some of the diet trends like keto and carnivore are keeping the demand hot. So then who profits from these higher prices? Well, it's certainly not us, the buyer. And it's not always the ranchers cashing in. Many cattle producers have also struggled. The drought forced them to shrink their herds, and rising feed costs have really cut into their profit margins. And with fewer cattle to sell, their income doesn't always rise. The so-called middlemen, like the larger packers and the retailers, they often capture most of the profit because they can raise the price quickly and spreading costs across massive operations. So what does that mean for this year? Well, they're saying that beef prices will climb nearly 10% in 2025. And that's another bump on top of what we are already paying. Beef production is projected to drop about 600 million pounds this year. And remember what I told you? It takes years to rebuild those herds. So relief, it's not coming fast. And what happens if weather is not our friend? And again, we get drought or disease or trade issues crop up, because we do get quite a bit of our meat from Mexico too. Then prices could surge even more. And the only thing that could slow it down is if demand slows down. So if purchasers stop buying it at the rate they are now for beef and switching to other proteins. So let's bring this home. If your household, let's say, buys 4 pounds of beef a week, you're spending about $500 more a year than you did just a couple years ago. In a household like mine, with my husband's carnivore desires, well, believe me, it even raises our budget further. So what can you do to stretch your beef budget? Well, of course, buy smarter cuts, skip those pricey ribeyes, which are delicious. Use the chuck roast, the brisket, or ground beef at the 80-20%, and turn them into slow cooker meals. That can taste amazing with the right recipe. And then, of course, stretch the beef. Combine the beef with lentils or rice or beans or grains. You know, just put double the amount of beans and cut the amount of meat you put in your chili in half. And believe me, that dish will still taste great. Now we are lucky. We have a side-by-side freezer, we have a huge upright freezer, and we have a chest freezer downstairs. So we have been able to buy beef when the prices have been good, buy beef in bulk, and that can make a lot of difference. So always check your prices at your Costco, your Sam's Club, or your local market for specials. And portion control. Do you really need the size portion of the beef that you're eating? Instead, should you substitute some of that for vegetables, which will end up to be healthier for you in the long run? And of course, you could also substitute in recipes, instead of beef, use chicken thighs, pork roast, where beef isn't essential. And did you know now that chicken makes up about 40% of the U.S. meat consumption? And that's compared to roughly 30% for beef and 29% for pork. Hey, if you're finding this video helpful, I hope you tap that subscribe button and that like button. It really does help my channel. And type yes in the comments if you have noticed soaring beef prices, and if you have any idea what to do about it. So yes, I think we all know that this beef, definitely more expensive and likely not to get cheaper soon. So try to plan ahead, shop smart, and use recipes that stretch your beef without losing flavor, of course. And maybe then you can still enjoy the occasional beef without torching your budget. So in my household, it would be a tug of war, which my husband always seems to win. And I bet many of you can relate. The good news is, with a freezer full of beef and a little creativity, I can win a bit of this battle too. So if this helped, hit that like and subscribe, and I'll keep sharing ways to stretch your dollar and recipes to stretch your dollar. And I'd love to hear from you. Do you have any go-to recipes or tricks that you use to make your beef go further in your kitchen? Please drop them in the comments below, because I read every single one. And remember, always, always share the knowledge, and we can prepare together. Thank you.